Segment 5, the solution. I should try to indicate a question mark in my intonation there. In The Road to Fatima Gate, this is near the end of the book, maybe about 3/5 or 4/5 of the way through the book. You recount a discussion you had with Walid Jumblat. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
You are, yes. That's correct.
Walid Jumblat, who's the leader of the Druze minority. This is to simplify things, you left this out when you were talking about the sectarian divide, but the Druze
Right.
are about 250,000 or so in a population of 4 million.
Right.
So what do you think the solution is, I asked. I'm quoting the book. The solution is not in Lebanon, he said. The solution is in Tehran. Is he correct?
Yes. Yes, he is correct. Because Hezbollah is controlled by Iran. It is the Mediterranean branch of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. It's like an overseas brigade of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps in Lebanon.
The Obama administration is eager to draw down our troops in Iraq. They want out, and is refusing to put boots on the ground in Libya. They don't want in. Walid Jumblat, once again, quoted by you in The Road to Fatima Gate, making the Americans totally withdraw from the Arab world would be a mistake, would be a disaster for the moderates in the Arab world. The radicals and the Iranians would win. Close quote. Explain what he means by that, and then tell us whether you agree with the reasoning.
I do basically agree with his reasoning. His reasoning is that the United States, okay, first of all, he said this, let's see, which year was it he said this? This must have been 2000.
Oh, I don't have the date written down here.
7? I'm not sure.
I don't
remember
certainly
exactly.
after the war.
It was during when we were still fighting a hot war in Iraq. So maybe it was 2006. It was either 06 or 07. The United States military was the only force fighting Iranian power in the Middle East at the time. No one else. There's no one else willing to do it. So if it wasn't us, it was going to be nobody. That was his point.
That was his point.
Yes.
Is that strictly speaking true? There is the other argument. There is the argument that if the United States had just stayed out, sooner or later, the Saudis, possibly the Egyptians have population. The Saudis have immense wealth. They certainly can buy any military equipment. They have a lot of military equipment. Sooner or later, they would have felt it. They would have taken it into their own hands and done what they needed to do. We should have stayed out of it. It's not our region. It's a violent, difficult, just the way you took several minutes just to begin to explain the basics in Lebanon, and that's the way politics are throughout the Middle East. There's no way we can master them. Leave it to the people in the Middle East. What do you make of that argument?
Well, I have some sympathy for the argument. I mean, the Middle East is a mess. It's going to be a mess no matter what we do. If anyone asks me what I think the solution is, well, I will have to say that there isn't one. I mean, I've asked myself...
question.
I've asked Middle Easterners over and over again in Arab countries and in Israel, so what's the solution? Nobody proposes a solution. Nobody even believes there's a solution. The very question is American. Nobody in the Middle East thinks there's a solution. But we do have interest in the Middle East whether we like it or not. I mean, what happens in the Middle Eastern politics affects the United States.
Okay.
We learned this on September 11th. Also, if the Iranian government dominates the Persian Gulf the way it wants to, then it's going to be able to set whatever price for oil that it wants to. And because the Iranian government is implacably hostile to the United States and the West, they could do significant damage to us, very significant damage to us,
okay.
Economically.
You are constructing, I think, an argument that leads, I think, inevitably to a certain conclusion, but let me push it a little bit. If the solution lies in Tehran, question, can the Israelis handle Tehran on their own?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. I don't know if they know. I've asked Israeli military and government and intelligence officials if they are able to stop Iran's nuclear weapons program and if they are willing to stop Iran's nuclear weapons program. And I get different answers from different people. And I don't know who's right.
So if there is even a serious doubt that the Israelis can handle it on their own, then we must. Isn't that the conclusion?
I would agree. Some people wouldn't because they don't want to go there. And I understand very well why they don't want to go there.
Okay. Listen, the Arab Spring of this year took place after you'd completed the writing for the Road to Fatima Gate. Let me ask you about that very quickly. So, Tunisia, then Egypt, you get popular uprisings that overthrow strongman governments. In Libya, where rebels, as we tape this, are still struggling to topple Gaddafi. All this was in some ways reminiscent of the Cedar Revolution in Lebanon in 2005. As you argue in the Road to Fatima Gate, the Cedar Revolution came to nothing, essentially, correct?
Yes.
All right. So what do you expect to happen in Egypt?
I don't expect a good outcome for Egypt. I don't know Egypt nearly as well as I know Lebanon. I've only spent a week there. I'm by no means an expert in Egypt, but I had an apartment in Beirut when I went to Cairo, and I had a terrible feeling in the pit of my stomach when I went from Beirut to Cairo, that whatever happens in Egypt is not going to end well. And I spoke to some Egyptian liberals, I say liberal in the generic sense of the word, who were a lot like Lebanon Cedar revolutionaries, the same kinds of people with the same sorts of political views. But they told me that they were only maybe 5 to 10% of the country.
And what Lebanon would demonstrate is even if you're 25% of the country, all these good, idealistic, good human beings march in the streets, a relatively small but dedicated and brutal core of Islamists can trump even a huge proportion of the country. Is that?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
So you'd expect the Muslim Brotherhood or some permutation of Islamism to win out eventually in Egypt. Is that right?
Yeah, I could be wrong, but yes, that's the feeling that I had while I was there, and I have not yet been argued out of it.
3 final questions, and we're running out of time, so I'll give you a sentence or 2 on each. How's that?
Sure.
Any Republicans making sense to you in talking about the Middle East, particularly presidential contenders?
I'm not paying the slightest bit of attention to what any of them are saying.
I'm
sorry, I do not know.
I thank you for an honest answer. The Obama administration strikes you as naive, duly realistic. Where would they be on that spectrum?
I would put them on the naive end of the spectrum.
All right, last question. 5 years from now, I have the feeling that things move quickly in the Middle East. The Road to Fatima Gate suggests that. 5 years from now, will Lebanon have moved further toward becoming, in your words, a bigoted bully state? That is to say, will Hezbollah and Iran have more power over Lebanon? Or will it somehow have found its way back in the direction of that libertarian's paradise of 2005?
I think Lebanon is doomed until there's new governments in Syria and Iran. That there's no way that Lebanon's going to get out of this on its own.
Michael Totten, journalist and author of The Road to Fatima Gate, and the author, I should also add, of michaeltotten.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
For Uncommon Knowledge, I'm Peter Robinson. Thanks for joining us.